Hello, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you. Wherever you are in this world, I wish you well. Welcome to another episode of the Sacred Raven podcast. Grab yourself a nice cup of tea and let's get cozy. My love for the supernatural began at a young age. I was 7 years old when I began writing ghost stories. I always made sure to write them out on the lined paper with the 3 holes on the left side so I could tie the papers together with string when I was done. I have no idea where those stories are now, but I'm pretty sure my mom does. It wouldn't surprise me if she filed them away somewhere for safekeeping. Growing up, I would read the Fear Street and Goosebumps series, and one of my favorite shows as a kid was Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark? But as I got older, my love for anything scary waned drastically. To this day, I cannot watch a horror film without getting nightmares for a few weeks. If I am to watch a horror film, it would have to be in the morning so that my mind has other things to see, grasp onto, and think about throughout the day. My imagination is so active, it easily absorbs what it perceives. But that hasn't stopped me from being interested in the supernatural. In fact, I don't believe the supernatural and horror go hand in hand anyways. They are not mutually exclusive. I am fascinated by buildings and locations that are deemed haunted. And though I've never stayed in a haunted house or hotel, I would love to. To me, I don't find it scary. I find it fun and exciting. And over the years, I have experienced some ghostly encounters. I honestly don't believe any of them were scary or unnerving, but I thought it would be fun to share some of my experiences. I hope, at the very least, you find them a bit entertaining. For the first one, I'm going to take you back to the fall of 2000. I was a freshman at Bridgewater State College in Massachusetts. My 2 roommates, our neighbor Sarah and I, decided it would be fun to play with an Ouija board. I do not recall if this was everyone's first time playing with an Ouija board or not, but I remember the excitement and anticipation in the air. The 4 of us sat in a circle on the floor of my dorm room with the board in the middle of us. A couple of us would take turns placing our fingertips lightly on the planchette and ask various questions such as, does so-and-so like me? Or who am I going to marry? I remember I was told I would marry someone named Liam. That hasn't happened. That is not my ex-husband's name. One of my roommates asked who we were speaking to and why they were a ghost. The word kill, K-I-L-L, was spelled out. Immediately, the 3 of them screamed, got up, and ran out of the room. I sat there and started laughing at the absurdity. I was able to coax them back in, but we ended what we started and put the board away. Now, that isn't the ghostly encounter of this story. It's what happened afterward. For the following few weeks, items that were sitting on our shelves would randomly fall onto the floor. My roommates and I woke up in the middle of the night several times to hear and see a book or some other item fall onto the floor from the shelf above our computer desk. There was one afternoon in particular when Sarah came in to use our computer. I think she was having problems keeping hers connected to the internet, so she needed to use ours. She was sitting at the computer desk while the rest of us were hanging out on our beds. For context, the shelf above our computer desk had ample room to fit any and all sized books and picture frames and the like on it. And keep in mind, this is back in 2000. The computer monitors back then were boxy and bulky. Our computer monitor sat on the desk below it, but it stuck out at least a foot past the shelf above it. So, we were chatting away, probably discussing what our plans were for the weekend, when a metal picture frame suddenly fell off of the shelf and onto the floor. The four of us were silenced in disbelief, and then one of us quickly and quietly picked up the picture and set it back on the shelf. Sarah did not bump the desk or the shelf to make anything move. In fact, in the moments prior, she had actually leaned back in the chair and wasn't touching anything. And with the position we had the monitor in on the desk, there was no way anything from that shelf could have fallen and not touched the monitor. But that's exactly what happened. That frame flew off of the shelf and onto the floor. It didn't just drop. I don't remember who, but one of us said something along the lines of, "Whoever is doing this, get out. We don't want you here." And then that was that. We didn't encounter anything randomly falling onto the floor or being moved. Now, let's move ahead to the summer of 2005. It was nighttime. I was laying in bed trying to fall asleep. But before I continue, I will give you a little context. The house I was living in at the time, and am currently living in, used to belong to my elderly neighbors, Al and Emily. Growing up, my siblings and I would play in our yard as well as theirs, and my mom used to take care of them as they got older. Once they passed, my parents were able to purchase their home. We moved in there in the summer of 2001. I had not encountered anything supernatural or spiritual in the 4 years prior to this night. Maybe that was because the majority of my time was spent living in a college dorm, and I encountered enough there. But this summer night, I got to experience something calming. Like I said, it was nighttime. I was laying on my side in bed. My eyes were closed. I wasn't struggling to fall asleep, but I was just quieting my mind and body when I suddenly felt added weight at the end of my bed by my feet. You know how when someone sits down next to you, you can feel the weight of them make the cushioning go down? Well, that's exactly what I experienced. It felt like someone sat down right next to my feet. But I didn't get startled or felt even the slightest bit of fear. I kept my eyes closed and quietly spoke out loud, "Good night, Emily." And then I fell fast asleep. I remember waking up the next morning and looking down by my feet. I slept so deeply that I hadn't moved the entire night. There was a small indent in the mattress by my feet. I knew what I felt and experienced was real. And for whatever reason, I was certain it was Emily, not Al. I spoke with my mom about it that day, and she told me that that used to be Emily's room. She used to be in there painting all of the time. And well, I suppose I intuitively picked up on that the night before. Maybe her spirit needed to be in that room one more time. Maybe she wanted to help me fall asleep. I don't know. Shortly after that, my mom dreamt that she helped walk Emily and Al cross the street away from our house. When she told me that, I immediately knew her higher self or her spirit had helped them cross over. Since then, we haven't encountered anything ghostly or supernatural. Now, let's move ahead to the summer of 2011. I was working as one of the readers at a local metaphysical shop. It was a bright and sunny day. I intuitively knew there weren't going to be many people in the shop that day. It was just too nice out to be indoors. I walked to the back of the shop to use their restroom. To my knowledge, there was only 3 of us in the shop at that time. Myself and 2 coworkers, the clerks that were standing around the counter. As I walked back towards the front of the shop, I passed the library section. I suddenly heard a man's voice say, "Hello." I immediately stopped walking, spun to my right, and started to say "hey" back to them. But to my surprise, no one was there. The shop's library section is not large by any means, but I walked around it and then made my way through the rest of the shop to find that voice. I thought a customer came in while I was in the bathroom and that maybe they had a question. But there was no person that I could see attached to that voice. I walked up to the front of the shop and asked my coworkers if there was a customer in the store. They said no one besides the three of us were there. I told them what I heard, and one of them giggled. He said, "Oh, that was probably Matt. He was probably just checking you out." I asked who Matt was, and he informed me Matt was a very close friend of the owner. Several years prior, he passed away, but his spirit liked to hang out at the store. The owner created a small memorial for him in the back at the library section. I immediately went back over there to see what he was talking about. I had been working at that store for at least 6 months at that point, and have seen the photograph of a young man with brunette-colored hair, with lotus flowers and coins around it, but I never knew the story. I tried getting Matt to say something, anything else to me, but I never heard from him again. As far as I know, he still hangs out, not haunts, the shop. And the last one I will share with you occurred in 2014. I had recently gotten divorced and had started seeing someone new. One morning, he and I were standing in the bathroom of his apartment chatting about one of his coworkers. He was looking up at something while I was looking down, when all of a sudden I said, "Oh, I don't know. What do you want to do?" He immediately stopped what he was doing, looked at me completely baffled, and replied, "What?" I looked at him and repeated what I said. He looked at me like I had 5 heads, sort of giggled, and asked why I even said that in the first place. I told him I was answering his question. I thought he was changing the subject, and I answered his question. He then told me that he never asked me a question. And I looked at him confused and said, "Yes, you did. You are the only guy here, and you asked, 'What did you want to do this weekend?' And you asked it very quickly, might I add." He looked at me, narrowed his eyes, and said that he never asked me a question. We argued about it for several minutes until I conceded. I heard someone ask me what I wanted to do that weekend. I heard it so clearly that it sounded like it came from someone who was physically present. I thought it was him because he and I were the only two in the apartment. He didn't have a TV or anything on, so there was no background noise. But for that quick moment, we were not alone. Someone wanted to know what my plans were, and I have no idea why. We did not encounter anything else like that during our time together. Well, I hope you enjoyed these stories. I was not fearful of any of these encounters. In fact, I thought they were kind of cool. That's probably because it's my soul's purpose to be open and connected to the supernatural and spiritual side of life. Please let me know in the comments if any of you have encountered anything supernatural or spooky. Or let me know how you think you would have reacted if you experienced what I did. Thank you for joining me in this episode. I appreciate you taking the time to share this space with me. If this has resonated with you, please follow or subscribe or share this with someone who may be venturing down a spiritual path and has a hunger to learn and grow. I will see you next time. Stay cozy and take care.